Hello and welcome back to Afterglow episode 67. And I gotta start this one off with an apology and an explanation. Last episode, I had said that Roth would be joining us from NES Tips. But unfortunately, he is having some kind of internet issue. Not sure what's going on, but he doesn't have a stable internet connection. I gave him a couple days, but I have not heard back. But I mean, that's not surprising considering the internet issues he's having right now. So I'm going to go ahead and one-man this episode. That being said, Roth has an open invitation to come on the show whenever he gets everything resolved where he's at. Anytime he wants to jump in, we can either do a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Part 2 or cover any other game that he's interested in covering. So, that being said, I do apologize, but this is going to be a solo episode. But hopefully that's cool because I do have some cool memories of this game as well, which of course we will be covering after our music break. Alright, and welcome back. So, my story on this game is unfortunately a little blurry. I don't remember how I got it. It could have been from that game rental store. It could have been a swap. I don't know exactly how I got it. I know roughly when, though. I roughly got it whenever the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis were the big thing out there. I did manage to get a copy of Turtles 3. And whenever I started playing it, I noticed very, very similar to Turtles 2, the arcade game, but it's definitely an upgraded version of that game. For one, the special attack in Turtles 2, with that really light jump and then a swing of your weapon, that's gone in this game. Instead, if you try to do that, your turtle does a special attack, which is almost like a zipper attack, but it does take a chunk of your health meter. So, don't do that. It is useful to get out of certain situations if you find yourself where you're gonna take damage anyway. You might as well deal damage to the opponent at the same time. That's usually when you want to do it. And if I recall correctly, I hope I'm right on this, whenever you're down to your last bit of health, if I remember right, you can spam your special attack over and over and over and over without losing life. That being said, one punch will kill your turtle at that point. But, I mean, if you want to do a kamikaze attack, that's the way to go. There's a different special attack, though, which is one I always leaned on, which was a flip move, where your turtle would take their weapon and hold it outright, and then go up with it. And usually that would flip a foot soldier over you, and it would deal more damage than your standard jump kick and your standard attack. So that was usually my go-to move, because you got a little bit of extra damage without losing health. And then, if I recall correctly, I would kamikaze whenever I got really, really low in life. But the game kind of has a cool story where the turtles are on vacation in Florida, on the beach, in the sun, with everyone in direct view of them. I thought the turtles hung out in the sewers to, hide and not be seen by the general public. And here they're just out in the public beach. Really weird. But anyway, Shredder takes over Manhattan. Not only does he take over Manhattan, he's got the ability to lift the entire island from the sea into the air. Not sure how that works, but it happens. So your adventure begins, and you have to leave the beach that you're on. And after that, you get on some surfboards, and you surf to a submarine, which you find on to end up on the bridge to Manhattan. Which, of course, since Manhattan's in the air, the bridge is half destroyed. You go over this bridge, you fight through floating Manhattan, and you eventually get to the Technodrome. Kind of interesting, because in the previous two games, the Technodrome was the final level. And here, it's a little bit past the halfway point. You go on to, I believe it's Krang's spaceship, which is considered separate from the Technodrome. Then you end up fighting Krang and Shredder, and then you get to fight Super Shredder, which was a pretty cool thing for the NES version of the game. I believe this came out roughly the same time as Turtles in Time did. So, if you didn't have a Super Nintendo, you didn't have a way of playing Turtles in Time, you still got to fight Super Shredder. I thought that was a cool touch. And then, of course, that was the end of the game. What I do remember, this game is more difficult than TMNT 2, the arcade game on NES. They did crank the difficulty, and they cranked the length, too. The arcade game seemed a hair bit long. It was definitely longer than the actual arcade game, but the NES version was on the verge of being too long, in my opinion. They added 2 levels, which was cool to see stuff that wasn't in the arcade version, but it felt a little too long. And this game feels, in my opinion, a lot too long. It kind of overstays its welcome. It's a shame, too, because it is a blast to play. The gameplay mechanics are incredibly fun, and mechanically, it's a better game than TMNT 2. But I feel like it should have ended just a hair bit earlier, just in my opinion. But, that being said, the game is a blast to play. And if I were to choose between the second and third game, hard choice. But if I had to choose the NES versions, I would definitely choose TMNT 3. But if I had the option of choosing the actual arcade game, I would definitely choose TMNT 2. Even over Turtles in Time, shockingly. It was a blast to play. But after I got on the NES, I didn't really mess with emulating it, to be honest. I emulated the arcade game if I wanted to play a Turtles beat-em-up. But never heard or saw it again until, of course, the Cowabunga collection. Once that came out, I got to replay this and again rekindle my fondness for it. It is a really, really good beat-em-up. One of the best on the NES. Yes, it is long. But that doesn't take away from the fact it is an incredibly good beat-em-up and definitely worth your time to seek out and enjoy. Especially if you haven't got the Cowabunga collection yet. I mean, some of the greatest beat-em-ups ever made are in that collection. Get the arcade version and the NES version of Turtles 2. You get the Manhattan Project, this game I'm talking about in this episode. And, of course, you get both versions of Turtles in Time, as well as the Hyperstone Heist on the Genesis. All these are fantastic beat-em-ups, so it was kind of like the big thing for Turtles game in this era. for the most part, their beat-em-ups were all superbly done. And every once in a while, you'd get an oddball. You'd get a fighting game, or you'd get, of course, the original version of the NES game. But overall, very, very solid game. I quite enjoyed it. I also want to bring up the music in this game is very, very well done. Like, it's back in this era, Konami could almost compete with Capcom and Sunsoft when it came to the tunes that they could pump out of the NES. And that kind of continued into the Super Nintendo era, but this game in particular had a really, really superb soundtrack, although they did abuse some sound bites just a little bit. There's a hey that comes through a lot that I'm sure you've heard in some of the music I've played for this game already in this episode. But, I mean, it's kind of cool to hear that sound beat and kind of hear it integrated in with the rest of the music. I thought it was a cool touch. But that's going to close out my thoughts for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3: The Manhattan Project on NES. Hopefully, like I said, we can get Roth on, and I'm willing to do a part 2 for this game if he wants to talk about his memories and thoughts of it, or we can talk about any other game that he wants to do. I really wish we could have got him on, though, because I know he played this, I know he did enjoy it as well. But again, he's having internet issues, and I'm really, really hoping they get resolved. That way we can eventually get him on the show. That being said, I'm closing it out, so we're going to play some more music before we roll the outro. Welcome back, and thank you again for tuning in for another episode of Teenage Mutant Nin-June Turtles, Secret of the Reviews. Hope you enjoyed this one, and we've got one more left in the tank before the end of the month to pump out, and I hope you guys enjoy that, along with all the other Turtle episodes I've done this month. On top of that, there are 2 other Turtles episodes out there. I covered Ninja Turtles 2 on the NES, along with the Super Nintendo version, The Turtles in Time with Goobs and Secret Levels. If you're interested in more Afterglow goodness, check the show notes for the Discord and the Patreon links. We have friends, of course, like Retro Gaming Roundup, Secret Levels, and the Lost and Gone podcast. If you're looking for something new to listen to, check out all 3 of those guys. They're all very entertaining. As for Afterglow, our show logo and artwork is done from TobyVonDoom from Secret Levels. The intro and outro music is done by Grim from the Lost and Gone podcast. There's one more little tidbit of turtly goodness coming up at the end of the month, so I hope you tune back in again for that episode. And until then, I'll see you next time.